Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Educator Wellness Revolution. We are very excited to be here with two of our favorite fellows. You're all favorite fellows and former fellows, Gabrielle Dubose and Jackeline Peña. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? We'll start with Gabrielle. Could you tell us who you are and a little bit about your role?
Well, hello, everybody. Greetings and salutations. I'm Gabrielle Dubose, teaching high school at Duke Ellington in Georgetown, DC. For the past 3 years, I've been running the Writing Center for Duke Ellington, which gives me access to as much of our population as possible to train and retrain students on writing skills, academic skills, etc. I also have the pleasure of teaching a course on the history of Duke Ellington. We are celebrating our 51st year. Woohoo! Ellington started around the same time as the 1973 Home Rule Act of DC, and we know what challenges home rule is currently facing. So I also have an opportunity to teach our teenagers about home rule and its significance to the city and how Ellington ties into all of that. There's also a documentary that's been worked on about our school, and I'm joining the research team. I'm very excited about that. In addition to that, this year has been different for me because I've also had a chance to get involved in some of the school events because I am an alum of the institution. And we've had lots of alumni events this year. So I've had a chance to help with the planning and the execution of that, as well as arts as activism. This is something our principal initiated 3 years ago. And because of what I teach and because I'm a graduate of the school, I've had a chance to become a part of that team. And so we've got a huge initiative right now we're working on at the school that's going to end up with something like a science fair exhibit kind of setting for parents to come in and see the types of how their children, our students, plan to use, would like to use, are using their arts as activists against all of the issues we currently face. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. That sounds really impactful. I actually didn't know about the documentary, so thank you for raising that. Jackie.
Hi guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, connected with you guys. I am a early childhood educator. I've taught just about everything in elementary school, and my role within Power Ed, I think this is my third year within Power Ed. Um, Honestly, just learning. I joined in Power Ed because I wanted to learn more about education and the impact we can make through education beyond the classroom. So for me, I just see myself as a student of Empower Ed in all things advocacy.
I
Awesome.
think I need to jump back in there if I could. I didn't mention Empower Ed. Oh, heavens to Murgatroyd. I've been a fellow with Empower Ed for several years, and I'm currently serving as a board member.
Yes, and these are our two actually educator board members now with Empower Ed. So we are excited to have both of you on for this conversation because you both stepped into different roles in advocacy, and we are gathering on Teacher Appreciation Week. So Teacher Appreciation Week, it often looks a certain way, right? Like we get food, you get the catered lunch, you get the goodie bags, you get the swag, but it doesn't have to be just that, right? Because we can show appreciation in many ways to our educators. So I wanted to ask you to just reflect as we go through this Teacher Appreciation Week on a valuable and memorable experience that you've had or a gift that you've received as part of Teacher Appreciation Week, something done for you on Teacher Appreciation Week that did have a real impact and made you feel appreciated. Jackie, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. I mean, I think teacher appreciation would look different from parents versus from administrators. I think one of the most memorable or valuable gifts I received from parents. I'm not too demanding when it comes to gifts and things like that because everybody's family situation is different. But I think for me, one of the most valuable gifts have just been, really acknowledging the progress, the impact that we've made on students in their children, and hearing families just give testimonies of you really made a difference. You really showed us. You taught us. And I think having that openness from families is such a gift as a teacher, to know that they're also learning. We're experts in our field, and sometimes, even as parents, we teachers and parents, we still need that fresh perspective. So I think from parents, for me, like I said, I'm not so demanding. Appreciation just seems like openness and welcoming, your area of expertise when it comes to teaching. From administrators, I would say, um, just understanding what do we even do? I currently teach pre-K, and I think sometimes it's people don't know what goes on in pre-K. And even when we're being evaluated, I feel like we're being held to a standard from kindergarten or from another grade, and it's like you don't realize how hard it is to break something down so foundational. But today, actually, one of our assistant principals made paella for us, like out in the North Courtyard. And it's more about like not so much the food, making it. It's bringing that camaraderie, bringing people together, creating that sense of community, and just reminding us that we do have the support that we need in each other. Though, additional supports are always needed. But for me, that's honestly, I'm not too complicated when it comes to
Yeah, I want to lift up a few things from what you just said. One is that like creating a community and feeling in community with your staff. Two, because we've heard from ECE educators about this a lot, that often people don't understand what it is to be an early childhood educator, right? And they think just like you're just playing, right? You have nap time, right? And like people really don't understand the challenges of teaching, like you said, such foundational skills. And all the challenges of the day, right? When you're with people so intensively throughout the whole day. So understanding people's roles, whether it's EC or any other role, just understanding the role and contributions that each person gives to the school community. And I also want to lift up what you said at the beginning, just like the words of affirmation. And my daughter was thinking about what to bring in yesterday for Teacher Appreciation Week to her teachers. And of course, we're sending gifts, but I was telling her, I was like, I think the most impactful thing is going to be what you write for them. So just make them a little card, write something nice to them, because I think what you say to them is going to have more of an impact, than the gift cards or the flowers or, because it's really, that affirmation is so important to feel like the difference we're making is impacting the kids, we're serving every day and their families. Gabrielle, what about you?
I'm really thinking it through because I've taught pre-K 3 through high school. And so when I was part of a small Christian school, it wasn't small, it's about the size of Duke Ellington in Texas. I was teaching primarily on the elementary side. And so parents, room moms were able to actually facilitate a lot of Teacher Appreciation Week. They were also in the classroom with us before we even got to this week of celebration. And so one of the things I remember is being given the opportunity for moms to come in and sub for half day or whole day during holiday time. So they gave us the gift of time. And because room moms were always present, they were always that extra ear that we needed in terms of supplies or art projects we wanted to get to, et cetera. And they helped us build those things, have those things going on in the classroom. So that was a huge community support, and it helped with the well-being of the educators wanting to stay in that environment. And I think in smaller school settings, whether it's charter or private schools, those types of niceties, if you will, are able to happen. At the same time, the administration at the school at Christmas time gave every teacher a bonus, $500 at Christmas, and that was a given. It was expected. So, being given the gift of time from parents, building that community there, and also administration, making sure there was that budget line for the holiday season so that teachers would feel appreciated, with the shopping or whatever the needs were at that particular time. Now I'll fast forward to where I am currently. I'm teaching high school. And so I still am of the mindset that somewhat of a room mom culture could happen in high schools, even in public schools in Washington, D.C. I think it takes time to plan something like that out. But I think with the parents that are, have their kids in these schools in D.C., I think if we were to present the idea, give the opportunity, I think creativity could abound from there. I appreciate the lunches that we receive and the gift cards, the thank you notes, those kinds of things. But I think even at the high school level, if the students, and this would have to happen, I think, with the help of the room mom, high school students could write thank you notes, notes of appreciation, right, to the teachers, that would go a long way. So at the end of the day, and I know Empower Ed is about teacher voice. So wherever teacher voice can get in there with these solutions to create a better school culture, school community, I absolutely support that and hope that we can see that kind of change happen.
Yeah, thank you. I'm thinking about, I mean, at Empower Ed, we talk often about being human-centered leaders. And I think it's important to also acknowledge that like our appreciation for educators also needs to be human-centered. So catering a lunch, but also like that homemade paella sounds like really, really special for your school, Jackie. And Gabrielle, I'm also hearing like, I want to lift up that piece about getting time back because we do consider that one of our teacher appreciation languages. Um, but it is so valuable to educators just to have that time back to really tackle the 1,001 things that are on your to-do list and that, are often not, you often don't get your praises sung for having this documentation in on time or whatever it may be. So what are some of the unappreciated teacher skills or tasks that you really wish you received acknowledgement for during Teacher Appreciation Week and all year? And we can start with, we'll head back to you, Gabrielle.
Well, just Caroline, listening to you share just then, what comes to mind also is the flexible scheduling pilot that Empower Ed has championed. And with that in mind, and thinking about giving teachers time back, that's one of the most valued gifts any teacher can receive. So to be able to have that pilot program grow, whatever that means for each school campus location, I think is a critical piece that should not be missed, whether it's Teacher Appreciation Week or just any other school day out of the year. It's important. To get to your question and asking about unappreciated. Okay, so what comes to mind is teacher solutions becoming part of the school culture. And so when teachers offer solutions, it could be about absenteeism, it may be tardiness in the classroom, it may be kids who don't seem to understand when breakfast time is over. No, you can't bring your food into the classroom. There are policies, and at my school in particular, that are written. But when the policies are not managed well, and sort of the responsibility is left to the teacher to carry out the policies without the policies being managed school wide, that is absolutely not appreciated because it puts the teacher in a very uncomfortable role. Here we are, and I'm talking about the high school level now, and we are teaching English and math and science and all of these things. And where I am, it's an art school. So academics and arts are oftentimes vying for the same role, same position. So it's not appreciated by teachers, and we have to push policy up to the students and remind administration what the policies are. That again puts the teacher, adds more stress and pressure to a teacher's already oftentimes stressful role, right? So having administrations manage the policies that they write school wide, that's a huge lift for teachers.
Yeah, the implementation is usually like just a beast.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of like day-to-day work that falls on educators' shoulders and is often not acknowledged. So thank you. Thank you for raising that.
Mhm.
So I'll piggyback off a little bit of the flexible scheduling points. I think sometimes it can be overlooked that teachers also have lives um, outside of work. I remember when I was a kid, I used to think that my teacher slept in school. And I think some of my kids also think that somewhere in our classroom, there's not math, so I just happen to stay here because when they leave, I'm here, and when they come back, I'm here. But I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old at home, and I remember one time I was running so late, like I just woke up, my kids didn't want to wear the clothes that they picked out the night before, and so couldn't get them in the car, and I had to get them to school, and so I was almost like an hour late to work, and I remember calling my administrator and I'm like, I am so sorry. And it was so comforting, for her to say, it's okay. I woke up to angry children as well. It was just so comforting, to know that somebody understood. I wasn't being, like harassed about it or penalized for it. And, you have to keep in mind that the teaching profession is an industry that attracts so many different backgrounds of people. Um, One of the reasons I wanted to be a teacher in the first place was the well-roundedness of skills that teachers have. You talk to people, and there was a substitute teacher we had here once, and she was like, yeah, I'm a lawyer, and like I just picked this up because like I want to do something. I want to, there's changes in my life. I want to, support my son. And I'm talking to my teacher's aide, and she was in the military. You start talking to so many people, and like you begin to see that teaching might have been their first, initial profession, or what they went to school for, but the majority of teachers, have a political science background, have anthropology, have psychology, that have so many different degrees and so many different things, because teaching is such a transitional um, career to move into, and I think that we need to continue to attract those types of people who bring so many different experiences and backgrounds into education. And then once you're exposed to the classroom and you see the inner workings of a school, you're just like, wow, so many things start running through your mind. So going back to what's unappreciated, I think it's unappreciated that everybody who comes into teaching is just so well-rounded. And I think we need to spend more time getting to know people, getting to know their background, getting to know their skills, expertise, even hobbies, like so many talented people that come into teaching, and they bring all of that with them in creativity. Um, and we need that. We need that in the classroom.
I love that, and especially as we are in a period now where we invite a lot of former federal workers who are moving into the teaching profession, and people come from a lot of different backgrounds as they come in. Gabrielle, you wanted to add something?
How did you know, Scott? This is so funny. You guys are not going to believe this. This happened yesterday. I was talking to one of our ninth graders, and she was looking for her SPED teacher. And I said, well, you know where the SPED offices are, the classrooms, like right underneath where we were standing. She says, oh, yeah, 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 over there where they live. And I said, no, no. I said, they work there. They don't live there. I said, they actually live outside. She says, no, they live there. I was like, oh my gosh. So, Jackie, to your point, even in high school, kids still think teachers live in those spaces and we don't have lives outside of that. Anyway, I found that hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. And then just like one of the things that we do find in our partnerships with a lot of schools, I mean, the way that educator wellness needs to happen on a lot of different levels. And one of those is just the way that educators provide supports for each other, because we do focus a lot on the organizational pieces and the policy and the practice that needs to shift, and then how to sustain people's individual wellness. But a lot of it really is just people building credible community. And part of that is getting to know people at a deeper level, that they are coming with more into this, and building relationships, people understanding each other in their roles, as you highlighted earlier. But in the current landscape, teachers are just being tasked with so much, and there's new stress and trauma post on top of what already existed. And it's a very stressful time for educators and for students in a lot of different ways. Curious how you've seen educators come together and support each other through everything that's happening right now. And I'll start with you, Jackie. I know you're out of school with a heavy immigrant population, and there's a lot of concerns, obviously, on a daily basis. How are educators coming together? How is your school community coming together and building that community and supporting one another?
Well, I said earlier that teachers are very well-rounded individuals, and I think something I love about being around teachers is we are so resourceful. Like any little bit of experience, anybody that you want to bring them in, you want to extract as much information as you can, because that's just what we're trained to do. So in this current time, it's been so refreshing to see, one, from teachers, when we have different staff meetings and things like that, and issues come up, they're like, I have a friend who's a lawyer. Let me ask her. I have this. I know someone. I have a parent who this, and everyone is just so quick on their feet to
Yeah.
share resources, to pose solutions. to just talk about it. Like, I think in the hurry of the day, it's really hard to slow down, but it's been refreshing to see how teachers are, like you see them, they're thinking, and you're like, are you okay? You're like, yeah, I'm just thinking about a student, this is what's going on, and this family's going on. It's refreshing to see that because they're like, back to the human centeredness of
Yeah.
teaching and education. Like, it's important to not lose that side of compassion towards each other. I would also say from the administrative side, I'm very blessed to be in a school where our administrators are proactive, um, proactive about, family safety and student safety and just going above and beyond really what their job description entails. Um, but that's what I've seen on my side.
How about you, Gabrielle?
Think I would echo a lot of what Jackie just shared in terms of resources that teachers can be and are to each other. We've always had those conversations going at Ellington because Ellington is it's a hybrid. It's I refer to it as a beast often because it's not quite charter, it's not fully DCPS, has its own funding board, etc. And so we've always had to know where the resources are within the building to sustain the school itself. I think, and to try to protect the vision and mission of Ellington, because at the end of the day, it's an art school, yes, but at its core, Ellington is a living activism. It's living, it's activism. Its purpose is to advocate on behalf of Black and Brown kids and those furthest from the opportunities of not just the arts, but a competitive education in the nation's capital, et cetera. So it's a full outreach at Allington, not just for students to come into the arts programming. So we've always had that, needing to know where the resources are and how to creatively go about sustaining the school itself. I would add that in this particular day and time, that conversation continues in addition to us being a resource, a source of help for each other. We're having lots of conversations to make sure that everybody is up on the latest in terms, of proposed attacks against the city. The Kennedy Center is one of Duke Ellington's partners. And so it's just an ongoing conversation to make sure you're aware of what's going on and to make sure that we're checking in with each other for our wellness as individuals, as educators, and then also for our children as well. So at the end of the day, we're physically sometimes and emotionally drained because we give all that we have there. Then we try to refuel and come home and make sure that family is in good shape. I will say this before I end this particular response or answer. Like right now, we're being told the month of June, is going to have some, I can't say unforeseen, but some challenges in terms of products. And so make sure you're storing up, what you need at home, what your family needs, non-perishable items, etc. I'm not sure how that would actually translate into the schoolhouse. What are we storing up in the schoolhouse against what it is that we're facing June and et cetera on through the end of the year? Like what would something like that look like?
Yeah,
Thank
thank you. I mean, those are definitely questions that are worth continuing to ask and to ponder. And I think that teachers make such great advocates because they really do sit at the intersection between like being really deeply rooted in communities and also having really deep knowledge of policy and change levers. And so we've touched on this a little bit, but we have 5 educator appreciation styles that we consider at Empower Ed. And the last one of these here that I want to point us to, and that I think we were getting at a little bit in our last bit of conversation, is policy change. This is a really great way to show teachers and educators that you are really listening to them and implementing the changes that they need for their students, for their families, for their communities and their schools. So what ways do you wish right now that the city, DC at large, DC Council, Mayor, how do you wish that they would show appreciation to educators through policy change? Can we start with Jackie?
You got a long list,
Wow.
a laundry list for us?
Yeah.
Wow. Huh. For six, I'm trying to narrow it down. I would say the first thing is, understand that the constituents that school serves are families, you know, And I think I don't know how well the United States as a whole, has really done with promoting pro-family policies, bettering family living situations, and has everything to do with early childcare and community schools, and lots of things that we can go on about. I'm trying to keep my mind focused so I don't go off into all those tangents. I think it's understanding that what we do is exactly what they do, and it's serving our communities. We have insight into what goes on with families at the front lines. We're counselors, we're psychologists, we hear what families go through. And I think appreciation to educators would be listen to us. Um, Ask, don't wait for us to speak up. I think ask us, create more spaces for us to be present. Something as simple as making sure that a hearing is accessible for us to attend. It's really that simple to show appreciation for us so that we can show up, because we will show up and we're willing to.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just jump in and say I would like for city officials to stop taking from the school budget. I would like for that budget line to be sustained, respected, and even increased. There's about 129,017 and under folks in the district. And of that number, about 25,000 are ages 14 to 17. So, those are big numbers, and the need is great. So to have the budget line remain for DCPS and for, public charter schools in the district would be a huge weight lifted off of not only educators, but families and education community supporters as well. So that makes me think about community and connected schools, which is something that Scott had me research several years back when I was a fellow with Empower Ed. And so I didn't quite see the full vision like I do now. And I've said this before. I think every school in the district should have DCPS, community school budget line, every school, DC charter schools, connected school budget line, because within that service, if you will, community or connected schools, educators and community members are able to, should be able to bring in more resources to the schoolhouse, where the school becomes a hub, not just for students, but also for families. I'm talking about now during school hours and after school hours. There are specific needs to every community. Yes, there's some sameness, but oftentimes there are unique factors also that, for example, would apply to Duke Ellington that wouldn't apply to Ballou. I did agree with something that Chancellor Farabee said a few years back. One of his comments was to help our young people, especially those coming from the more traumatized communities in the district, it takes a village. Like the school itself cannot solve and resolve. So to me, that reeks. It says community and connected schools, bringing in partners, and when that happens, families can feel more cared for holistically. That's going to trickle into the classroom setting. That's going to then impact administrators and teachers as well, because everyone will feel like they're seen, like their humanness matters. And I think when our young people can see the whole community like that working together, I believe our teenagers can begin to respect the city more. And that's going to tamp down on the violence and so forth that we see coming from our young people. So it takes a village. And guess what? The village needs money. So stop taking the money and the funds and listen to what teachers have to say. And let's really work together as a community to make life better. It can happen. It's not an impossibility, but everybody has to be on board.
Tell them we need the budget.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. And then the way you both brought in community schools, I think, connects it to, I think often people miss how much of a support it is for educators, because we think of it as what we're doing for students and families. But one of the ways to appreciate and show support for educators is to make sure those other needs are taken care of, so educators can do their principal job and educating them inside the classroom, knowing that those other needs are being met. And that's one of the reasons we speak out so much in favor of the community and connected school model, to make sure that students and families are taken care of, because that's what our educators need and want. from the city, really, and should be able to expect, right? So when we think about teacher appreciation, thank you for sharing all these ideas today. We're thinking not just about those food and gifts, but the gift of time and flexibility, the gift of professional trust, and the gift of mentorship and growth, that you're able to have ways to grow as an educator and be respected for your expertise, as we talked about in the building, and be understood, right, for the role that you have, and policy change, to be able to lift up solutions, and to be, as Jackie said, for it to be accessible, for you able to share those ideas, for them to come to us, and then for them to put their money where their mouth is, Gabrielle, as you said, and make sure those budgets are protected for all of those things. So many ways to make sure we show that appreciation for educators. And we were very glad to be joined by two amazing educators with so much experience in the classroom to share all your ideas today about how that happens. And think, our guests, those who are listening, share with us the ways that you feel appreciated in all of those ways, whether it is those food and gifts, the trust that you're given, policy change, time. What are the ways that you feel appreciated? And share those with us, and we will continue, of course, to lift these up with policymakers as we go forward, and hope that everyone has a great Teacher Appreciation Week, that you feel appreciated, and that all of those whose job it is to support educators find ways to do all of the above that you've heard today, and continue to support our educators. So thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.